Pursuant to the standing orders, members are attending in person, and I don't believe we have anyone. We do have some people online. Before I continue, I'd ask all in-person participants to consult the guidelines written on the back of the cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio feedback, incidents, and protect the health and safety of all participants, including our interpreters. You'll also notice a QR code on the table, which links to a short awareness video. A couple of comments before we start. Please wait until I formally recognize you, or you're asked to respond directly by a member. For those on Zoom, the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, and all comments should go through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best as we can. We appreciate your patience. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, January 27, 2026, the committee is commencing its study on the subject matter of Clause 223, Division 8 of Bill C-15, Budget 2025 Implementation Act Number 1. I'd like to welcome our witnesses here today. Minister, thank you for joining us. And, of course, the Deputy Minister, thank you for joining us twice this week. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We'll start by providing you with 5 minutes to speak, and then we'll go into questions. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Chair. And the Deputy was pretty excited to come back, I can tell you that. Firstly, I think all of us, this has been a tough week for the House of Parliament and many of our colleagues. So I'd like to give my condolences to the victims in Tumbler Ridge and the other places that the horrible and senseless tragedies are happening. So I just wanted to make a note of that. Mr. Chair, amid all the change and disruption happening in the world, our government is working hard to tackle these challenges. Bill C-15 implements important elements of Budget 2025 and is currently being studied at various committees, including this one. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss specifically Clause 223, Division 8, to amend the Farm Credit Canada Act. Farm Credit Canada is Canada's leading agriculture lender with more than 100,000 customers across the country. For over 65 years, FCC has been there with the unwavering commitment to customers and the industry through good times and through challenges. FCC listens to its customers and continuously adapts its products and services to fit their unique needs. Today, FCC plays a vital role in supporting farmers, food processors, and the entire agri-value food chain, helping to drive growth, innovation, and resilience in one of our country's largest economic sectors. Mr. Chair, we're talking about an industry that drives more than $100 billion of our exports, more than 7% of our GDP, and 1 in 9 jobs in this country. FCC is much more than a lender. It is invested in the future of our agriculture and food sector. Today, FCC continues to evolve and develop creative new tools to help the sector continue to invest, grow, and meet the changing needs of its customers. In fact, this week, we announced alongside FCC $7 billion of new investment into Canadian agriculture and food by 2030. This will help grow ag tech innovation in our agriculture, food industry, and sciences. FCC has also expanded its digital services, strengthened risk management, and introduced new financing tools focused on sustainability. Mr. Chair, as a government, we want to help make sure that FCC continues to have the tools and flexibility it needs to continue this great work. Our discussion today comes at a moment when Canadian farmers and food processors are facing unprecedented change, uncertainty, and instability from a perfect storm of pressures, including unjustified tariffs and other trade disruptions, extreme droughts and flooding, high input costs, animal and crop disease are just a few. We want to ensure FCC can continue to meet the evolving needs of the sector, remain aligned with best practices, and respond to future challenges and opportunities. That is why our government is moving forward with measures under the Budget Implementation Act to enable regular legislative reviews of Farm Credit Canada aligning with existing requirements for Export Development Canada and the Business Development Bank of Canada. Excuse me. The process will be inclusive to capture the different perspectives in this incredibly diverse sector. We will engage farmers, industry groups, and all other stakeholders who have a passion to see the sector succeed. By committing to regular legislative reviews, we will ensure FCC's continued ability to support farmers and agribusiness for generations to come. Lastly, Mr. Chair, I know there has been lots of talk around science and research. So I'd like to share that yesterday I participated in the Canadian Agriculture Food Policy Institute Roundtable on Agriculture and Innovation, where we had a productive conversation. I was able to reiterate Agriculture Canada's commitment to science and research. Thank you again for this opportunity, Mr. Chair. I look forward to the discussion and also to this committee study before you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And we'll start with the Conservatives for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. In C-15, when the Liberals invoked the Emergencies Act, which was now found to be unconstitutional by the courts, we were told initially that Farm Credit Canada did not share information on its clients and farmers who may or may not have participated or provided financing on a peaceful protest. But on further research and ATIPs, we found out that FCC did indeed share a list of farmers and clients who may have participated in that peaceful process with the Liberal government. Frustrating that we were told wrong information initially. Is there anything in C-15 that would ensure that FCC as a Crown corporation would not share private banking and account information with the government should they again be active in an unconstitutional crackdown on Canadians?
As far as I know, I don't believe that there's anything in the Act in reference to that question. It's a good point.
So were farmers then whose names were on that list, has FCC reached out to them and told them that their information was shared? And I would hope that there would be an apology or an acknowledgement that that did happen and that will not happen again.
I'm unaware, Honourable Member, but that would be a good question for FCC.
Thank you, Minister. And you did raise the issue about research, and you have now announced you are closing about 7 agricultural research centres in Canada. But your deputy also said that you have increased the funding to the On-Farm Climate Action Fund with an additional $300 million to now $700 million in total. The entire budget of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's research is $300 million. The Auditor General, when she audited the On-Farm Climate Action Fund, her comments were there was no measurable outcomes or strategy to actually meet expected contributions, poor results in management, missing performance targets for climate change mitigation, and no proof that any climate emissions or climate reductions actually happen. So my question, Minister, would it not make more sense to use the limited resources that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada has to provide those resources to actual research on the ground that shows measurable results like minimal till technology, new forage to reduce methane emissions in cattle? Would that not be a better use of your dollars rather than throwing good money after bad to a program that clearly has no measurable results and does not work?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Look, I think the National Policy Framework would be a great place to initiate that conversation. I believe that money was announced prior to all of this, but look, I hear from farmers that it works in some areas, and I hear from some that it doesn't. So maybe a better analytic on the outcomes going forward as we move forward with some of the changes that we're making would be appropriate, and I can certainly charge ahead in that regard to see if there's something that we should or shouldn't be doing with off-cap.
Well, I guess lastly, I'm going to pass the rest of my time off to my colleague, but I guess that would show the frustration is that you are making a significant cut to Canadian agricultural research, and it doesn't sound like you did your due diligence on where those dollars should be spent and where is the best benefit for the Canadian taxpayer, but also for Canadian farmers. To say, well, we should have taken a look at this, you should have done that before you announced these cuts to Canadian agricultural research. But I'll pass my time off to Mr. Rapp.
Minister, you referenced the FCC's participation in the $5 billion program. It was announced Tuesday. And yet the panelists in the afternoon, 2 of them specifically cited in response to the question, is access to capital your #1 problem? No, it's trade, markets, and regulatory reform. Our committee just finished a report on regulatory reform where you stated, PMRA and CFIA, that there needed to be an economic lens put to their decisions. Those two agencies pushed back and said that their mandate did not require change. So then when the CFIA goes and makes a decision to shut down destination inspection services, which have significant downstream impacts on trade, competitiveness, and food prices, are they not expressing that an economic lens should not be applied?
No, it's a good question, and I think everyone around this table senses my frustration sometimes with those entities. But I can tell you that we're doing further work on that issue alone, and we may have more information to come in the near future.
So did your department do an economic impact analysis on exactly that decision, a cost-benefit, including the projected increase in landed costs, dispute resolution delays, price markups by exporters, and food waste? And if so, you would table it with this committee.
Well, no, my department didn't. That would be in the hands of CFIA. But I can tell you that we'll continue to work and push the envelope on CFIA and PMRA on issues that we feel have a major impact on farmers, ranchers in this country.
You're aware that the implications of shutting down DIS, what that has over the potential re-implementation of PACA provisions in this country, it basically removes that possibility. Is this one way that the government's expressing their lack of support for reinstituting PACA?
I don't think there's a lack of support from AFC or anybody else in government. I think we certainly recognize the importance of this industry and all the sectors involved in it.
Thank you. I'll go to Harrison for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here this morning. Minister, the world is changing quickly and our government is responding. Could you speak to our government's most recent trip to China and what kind of access we've enabled for our producers?
Well, I think it's the result of the China trip came upon us relatively quickly. I think we were leaning on an open door, and we had the opportunity with the leadership of our Prime Minister to move forward a little more rapidly than maybe even anybody expected, including ourselves. But we were ready. Our industries and sectors were ready. I think what we've seen is certainly trade diversification, but re-entering that market was extremely important to many sectors, including canola, seafood, et cetera. And, we got to continue to build on that relationship. It's a people-to-people relationship. China's not the easiest in the world to deal with. We know that. It's a volatile market, but it's something that our industries and sectors are certainly supportive of and very grateful for the outcome to date.
Thank you. You mentioned in your opening that there will be legislative reviews of FCC. How frequently will those be done, and is there yet a framework in how they'll be administered?
Well, I think it's, that's something that I think is needed, and I think it's needed in every Crown Corp that's out there should have these reviews, and it should be legislated. There's been some issues raised from the opposition that I think could be challenged with these sectors during these legislative reviews. I think more communication and more oversight is something that I would be in favor of as a minister. But look, I think it's I'm not sure, Deputy, if it's 1 in 5 years.
Thank you, Minister. So the first such review will happen within 5 years of the Act coming into force, and then every 10 years thereafter.
Thank you. I'm going to share my time with my colleague, Ms. Dandron.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you for being here. And you know that there's a lot of questions currently about research in agriculture. You also know that there's a research center in my riding, and people are wondering what type of research are we aiming at in the future? And can you explain us what's your vision of research in agriculture in the upcoming years?
Two things. One, the operational cost of these facilities is something that our government of the past, the opposition government of the past, I think, really let get out of hand. We have almost $700 million in deferred maintenance sitting on the books. You're getting close to $1 billion. My vision is to make sure that we do as much research as we've done in the past. It's not going to be easy. Look, I sympathize with these closures and the people that work there. We're trying to mitigate and minimize as much pain as possible. I've spoken to 2 ministers just in the last likely one within the last few hours and one within the last 48 hours in relevance to this and how we can work together to move forward on this. I haven't spoken to the Minister of Quebec, to be honest, but I will. So I think, look, it's my vision to ensure that we do as much research as we've been doing, but it's also important to note that we need to involve the stakeholders in what research that they want done going forward. Look, we live in a world where it's changing rapidly. Research is a major component of everything that I do. Every trade deal, every time I sit down to do something relevant to another country, research is on the table. So we can't lose sight of that, and I won't lose sight of it as a minister. So it's something that I'll challenge my department to ensure that we're doing as much research as we were. It may be more coordinated. It may be more collaborative. I had the opportunity to meet with 3 academias so far, universities, to talk about their solutions and how we can incorporate some of what we've done and what we're doing into their facilities. So it's going to take a little time to iron this out, but we do have what we think is a year, so we'll move forward.
Thank you very much. And last week, we announced a series of measures for affordability, mostly at the grocery store. And there are a lot of measures that are targeted for agriculture. Can you explain us a bit more what are those investments, how those investments are going to help our farmers and our supply chain in food?
Well, I think everybody's concerned, obviously, with the way things are going with prices on some entities, and you hear a lot about it's not necessarily the farmers that are making the money, and I want to be clear on that because sometimes even in the House of Parliament we talk so much about the cost of living that a lot of people look towards the farmers like they're making all the money, and they're not. So. I wanted to be clear on that. Some of those entities are, when we increase like agri-marketing, for example, and we put in that we can now utilize small to medium enterprises, those are the types of things that, and then we have the food, I forget the exact name of it, but building, central, what is it?
Essential, the groceries benefit.
Yeah, the essential groceries benefit, pardon me? Okay, sorry, yeah.
We'll go to the block for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here with us today. You've sat in this committee. You took part in the drafting of the committee where you defended the importance of science in agriculture. And today we feel that your department is actually running in the other direction with cutbacks to research. My region was struck in 2012 by the closure of the Kapuskasing farm by Prime Minister Harper. A number of notes from your department refer to the importance of having agricultural research in the regions and to take into account the diversity of all regions throughout Canada. This week, I asked your Deputy Minister to tell me what aspect of research was carried out in my riding, in my area of Abitibi-Témiscamingue over the last few years. And I want to ask you the same question. Because history has taught us not to repeat the mistakes of the past. You may be telling us that you're going to do a better job than the Conservatives, but we remain quite skeptical as to the impact of these cutbacks in the sector. How will you maintain local expertise in the regions, in the various regions, given the cutbacks in science and research approaches with universities? Are those things that you're considering?
Yeah, certainly. And I had the opportunity to visit Laval University, and even yesterday spoke briefly with the Dean of Agriculture. Those are important conversations because it's important for me to hear, coming from them firsthand, how we can work together. I think the first part of your question was what kind of research was being done. A lot of it was soil health in that regard, but there's others, obviously. I've seen some things at Laval in the dairy field that is extremely important and kind of unique. So there's all kinds. But I feel that the academia in this country can play a major, major role in moving forward with research and science in agriculture and agri-food that'll benefit everybody. I don't think we do enough. we do some collaboration, but I think we have the possibility of a really strong ecosystem to use the academias to be more beneficial to farmers and ranchers. Without a doubt, there's a lot of silo research going on, whether it be forage and east and west and so on and so forth. And I think it's important to note that we want to do more research. We don't want to do less. This is, without a doubt, a stumbling block to get through this process, but we're going to try to do it to the best of the ability of what we have, but also we're going to make sure that the input is there from the academia, which I met with many of them yesterday, and the stakeholders.
Merci pour votre réponse.
Thank you for your answer. The Grocery Store Code of Conduct has been in place since January 2026, and we're already seeing some practices that are indicating a problem that Loblaws, like refusal to pay certain fees or for our agricultural producers. What are you going to do with these unfair practices?
I think we have to recognize them and point them out to these retailers. I think it's, when we hear of proposals coming in to suppliers, farmers, an RFP and then an RFP being sent back the second and third time, I think that's a real issue. And I think those big distributors need to be called out in the public. And if it takes the Minister of Agriculture or somebody beyond that doing that, I think we should be doing it. Because I think we need to ensure that we're doing everything we can to make it a fair process for our processors, our farmers, our ranchers, to ensure that they're getting a fair and equitable price. We have a problem in this country with, I think, not enough competition. I would like to see more competition, and I think that would be important for everyone.
Vous souhaitez passer de la parole?
You want to walk the talk. If you do, then we'll be your ally. In the context of C-15, I'd like to address ALTO, which is a concern for producers specifically because the TGV or high-speed rail may end up running through agricultural lands. As the agriculture minister, what will you do to better protect the most fertile lands of Quebec and Canada in this context? And I'd also name something that the president of the UPA des Laurentides said, of a union. He said, how will the producer manage to get his hay if there is a trail line, a rain line going through there? We won't be able to find any other solutions.
Thank you. And it was a good question. It was raised at the conference that I spoke at in Quebec, and I've raised it several times with the Minister of Transportation. It's certainly on the radar, and I'll give you an example of we built, in my home province, we built a new highway, and it went right through, of course, PEI is mostly agricultural land. And they built basically tunnels under the road, so transportation like combines and larger tractors could get from one field to the other without crossing. So there are ways to do it, and I think they're acknowledging the issues. But I will say this: I mean, pressure from all angles is good pressure. So I think it's Martin Coron and I had conversations about this. So we'll keep the lines of communication open as this progresses.
Merci.
Conservatives for 5 minutes.
Monsieur le ministre, excusez-moi d'être présent aujourd'hui.
Thank you to the minister for being here today. It has to be said that we in Quebec at the research station in my riding is focused on foraging plant cultivars. The issue of hay is a significant one. The dairy industry needs these cultivars. Given climate change, there is the issue of drought. These cultivars have to evolve to show better resistance against drought. I'm not sure we're heading in the right direction here. Did your department do an impact assessment on the research center cutbacks? If so, can you provide it to the committee? And if not, will you be doing one?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So We absolutely recognize the importance of forage research, and so what we're doing is really trying to just do consolidation. As the minister said, it's going to continue in places across the country, including Lethbridge, Beaver Lodge, Swift Current, Kentville, Normandin, and Agassiz. And so our internal assessment was based on looking to see where else we could do the research and where.
Merci, mais j'ai une autre question pour le ministre.
Thank you. I have another question for the minister. Yes or no? Was there an impact assessment done on the cutbacks at the research center? A simple question, a yes or no answer. If you did, can you table that? And if not, will you be doing one?
We assessed impacts.
Bon, mais merci. Est-ce que vous allez...
Thank you. Can you table that before the committee so that we can take a look?
We can table some of our analysis, yes.
Yes, I'm told we can table some of our analysis, yes.
On va prendre ce que vous...
We'll take what you've got for us. Thank you very much. The Department of Agriculture, does it have anything to say about the mandate that Farm Credit Canada has? Does its mandate come from Department of Agriculture or Governor Council?
It basically comes from the Farm Credit Act. So I'm not sure we do we?
No, I think all the its mandate and so forth is all spelled out in the Farm Credit Act as opposed to any departmental acts.
Okay.
Okay. So my colleague was referring to your trip to China. In the media this morning, we heard that you would be having an economic mission to Mexico with Minister Leblanc next week. Then I would imagine you'd be focusing on ASEAN. How do you think your negotiations are going to go? That is, given all the negotiations with all of the neighbors, I get the feeling that you've kind of you're heading in a direction where you might create some problems. How are you going to manage with ASEAN once you've gone around and discussed with, CASMA rather, not ASEAN, CASMA?
No, I think we're doing the same as every other country is doing. We're trying to open up new markets, trying to establish ourselves in many different parts of the world. ASEAN, as you mentioned, is certainly an area that we signed the first bilateral agreement the Canadian government ever signed. Mexico, when you see that beef is going into Costco's in Mexico in 40 or 30 some stores, I guess it is now. We hope to have more on the fruit and vegetable side on this trip. Pet food, for example. I think we have to. And part of this trip will be to further align ourselves on the regulatory side so that when we are doing shipments with any commodity, that there is a clear digitized process that we're going to be utilizing. So I think it's an opportunity for us to continue those conversations. And I think the Mexican government is open to having those discussions.
Notre pays demeure un chef de file dans l'exportation de la génétique.
Our country is a leader in genetics. Will Agriculture Canada be supporting our genetics?
Yes, most definitely.
Merci.
Okay, great. We will go to the Liberals for 5 minutes. Paul Connors, MP.
Good day, Mr. Minister, and I thank you again for coming out to meet with the committee again today. I got a question that it just came in my head as we were talking about science and research. Can you tell me where agriculture ranks when it comes to science and research conducted within the government overall?
Well, I think there's lots of science departments, but I think the research that we do is likely 50% of our budget.
Yes,
yeah, it's more than 50% of our budget. So, even with the changes that we're making, we'll still be the largest science center per se in the country. So we'll continue to build on that. And I think there will be a lot of changes over the course of the next few years, even in agriculture, even after what we do here today, there's going to be changes because the world is changing. AI is going to play a significant part in agriculture research, and it's something that we need to adopt and adapt to quickly for farmers' sake.
I also wanted to, and this is just a comment on my part, on a comment you made. You said there previously that is not the farmers who are making the excessive profits. And I think that's very important for people to hear because people do think that farmers are making the excessive profits, and especially the farmers in Newfoundland and Labrador that I worked for so many years. The profits are not being made at the farm gate. It's been made throughout the line, and I think that's important for them to hear. You don't need, if you got any further comments on that, I'd like to hear it, but you don't have to comment on that.
Look, I think the costs have risen to farm. Land is more expensive. Input costs are more expensive, and I think when you look at farm gate yields, it's not necessarily translating into what it's costing farmers to do today. And you talked a little bit about retail. It can be frustrating for anybody that pays attention to the cost on the retail shelf and what the farmer is getting at the farm gate. So,
thank you very much for that comment. There's an article now that was put out. I'm not sure. I just saw it. That there's U.S. agricultural groups launching a campaign backing the trade deal with Canada and Mexico, and it goes on to say the coalition touts benefits to CUSMA, to rural America, key voting bloc for Trump and the party down there. Do you have any comments on that? What have you heard from farmers in the U.S.?
Well, look, our industries are integrated. Any conversation I had with Secretary Rollins, that was acknowledged. I know the official opposition asked about going to Mexico if there's any impediments there relevant to the CUSMA trade talks. On my way home from Mexico, I'll be stopping in the U.S., in Washington, to meet with Secretary Rollins with a negotiating team. So we'll be having those conversations. I think dialogue and person-to-person is extremely important. I think the U.S., as you're aware in that article, there's been other letters written to Washington, how important these two countries live side by side, our neighbors, do a tremendous amount of business, how negative a disruption in CUSMA could be to both economies. And I think they're starting to realize it, and they're starting to speak up. And it's something that we look forward to, but certainly, if there's any farmers out there listening, to reach out to those farmers in the U.S. And have those conversations with the people that they know, because we do a lot of business. There's a lot of friends. There's even relatives in the U.S., and we need to be talking to them on a daily basis.
I'll just finish off with a comment then, because this week I met with peat moss farmers, and one from Newfoundland who's expanding his business in Grand Falls and moving to Gander and hiring on new people. And I think he told us 80% of their market of peat moss producers across the country, 80% of their market goes into the U.S.
Thank you very much. Next we'll go to the Bloc Québécois, Mr. Lemire, for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In 2023 in Abitibi West, we dealt with drought that was linked with forest fires and the snowpack issue. Insurance programs were slow to move. Several farms had to get into debt to buy hay, and do other things, can we expect that there will be new changes in the agricultural sector programs to make sure that the systems will be better adapted and the money will actually go into the hands of these producers?
That's certainly not the first time I heard this type of issue. So I think, the national policy framework is a place where BRM is likely going to be the top line item discussed at every conversation. And I think part of that, what you're saying or asking, is basically going to be a large part of the whole overall discussion in every province in this country. And we got to look at ways to expedite getting those funds in the farmers' hands a lot quicker. And that's something that's certainly on our radar. Yeah.
Merci, sincèrement.
Thank you, sincerely. The enhancement to agri-marketing seems to focus on exports. I wonder, Minister, at what point will we actually be focusing on making our agricultural producers accessible here? We have the best standards in the world, the best, the toughest, harshest environmental legislation, but we are importing things from elsewhere, and we're not eating local enough. Instead of marketing our products internationally, can we focus on what we're doing in the regions, abattoirs in the regions, reducing transportation costs and making these things more accessible on the shelves here in Canada?
Certainly, look, a lot of the stuff that we import is the fruit and vegetables that we don't grow. I mean, people use lettuce all the time when we talk about the cost. I mean, if it's coming from California, if there's a drought in California, it's kind of like our chicken farms in the lower mainland of BC. The same thing happened. The price of chicken went up, it came back down, but I mean, so that plays an integral role in that. But you're certainly right, and I think the more we do here at home and become domesticated, the better off we're going to be. And that's certainly a goal of ours. And you talked about agri-marketing. There actually is, an enticement on the agri-marketing file that we actually included small to medium enterprises in that file now. So they can see the benefit of not only exporting, but ramping up their domestic product as well. So it may give them an even more of an incentive, but it certainly is something that we're certainly well aware of, and we need to do a better job of creating more at home.
Okay, Conservatives for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today. Like I said before, it's always good to have a fellow Maritimer in the room. I just want to say, Minister, as you're well aware, you confirmed here at committee in October that PEI is not infested with potato wart, yet the ministerial order remains in place, and PEI seed potato growers still cannot access key U.S. and domestic markets. You also stated that $50 million had been provided to the seed growers, but the PEI Potato Board, in a letter that they wrote on December 18th to you in December 18th of 2025, still has not received a response. In fact, they haven't received any compensation, and CFIA has confirmed that it does not have the authority to pay for these losses. So when will the PEI seed producers receive the compensation that was promised to them, and what is your plan to restore their full market access? These are your farmers, Minister, and they are gravely concerned.
Thank you for the question. So, look, extremely important. It's our biggest crop on Prince Edward Island. The promises were made, or per se promises were made, back 3 ministers ago. Since 2021, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has dispersed over $18.3 million in compensation, including $9.7 specifically allocated to seed potato growers.
Minister, not to, I have short time, but they were promised 50, and it's been over 60 days since they wrote you a letter. They haven't received a response.
I'm trying to tell you exactly what the amount of money, because if I said 50, I wanted to add it up so I can show you that there's 50 to 19.2 million in potato stabilization, 21.9 million through CASP 100 to support the PEI Potato Board and efforts to divert. But I will say this. It's on my radar and always will be, because I live in it every day. Family, friends, and relatives are potato farmers. But we're in a trade war with likely our biggest customer. And I've been told several times by processors that are doing table stock and what have you, not to raise the red flag too high until we get through this trade war. I don't want to jeopardize McCain's. I don't want to jeopardize Cavendish Farms on any other market that's going into the U.S. right now. And I think we have to be very thoughtful in everything that we do and say.
We absolutely have to be very thoughtful. Has this been communicated to the producers in Prince Edward Island? And I know throughout Atlantic Canada there's huge concerns about our region as it relates to agriculture being overlooked, sometimes passed by, their concerns being neglected. And some of the most recent indicators of that is the closing of the Napan research facility for agriculture, which definitely has an impact on our beef producers in the Maritimes and forage growers and producers. And this has been raised as a huge concern. And we know that research is a major component of agriculture and meaningful component of agriculture. And we have studies produced and provided by the Canadian Cattle Association that says for every $63 that is spent on research, every $1 that is spent on research, there's a $63 return. That's an amazing return on investment for research as it relates to science and agriculture. And yet the Department of Agriculture seems to find priority to fund things like gender-just rice in Vietnam, which I don't think Canadian producers and those in New Brunswick or PEI are identifying as a major priority for where taxpayer dollars should be spent. But research facilities for the future of food security in Canada is a priority.
Well, the program you're talking about is not an ag program, but I will say this. Beef production activities can be consolidated and continue in Swift Current and Lethbridge, coming out of Napan. Forage production, management, and breeding activities will continue at Truro. Key science positions will be retained at Truro. And I want to go back to the operational side of this. And this might be an unfair statement, but I'm going to say it anyway because I think it's important. So I mentioned we have $700 million in deferred maintenance. We have some properties, and I won't mention which one, but we're up to near 45% of their budgets going into maintenance. That's not a business. All you people sitting around this table, some of you have business, some of you have farms. You can't succeed with that. So we have to make changes.
Who has responsibility for the oversight of those facilities? It is your department. It is the minister and the Department of Agriculture. That responsibility falls upon the department, not on those researchers on the front line of providing good science for our producers.
Next, we'll go to the Liberals for 5 minutes. Welcome to our committee, Mr. MacDonald. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister and Deputy. Start out, I guess, my colleague across the way here feels that Atlantic Canada may not be well represented by a succession of agriculture ministers from PEI. The current minister and the previous minister were both from Prince Edward Island. And I want to assure Atlantic Canadians that as a member of the Liberal caucus, you have an active farmer in caucus, and I'll be a strong advocate for those potato producers who are trying to reestablish a seed market with the United States. There is complicated issues there that have to be worked out. And in entirely the entire sector in Atlantic Canada, I will speak up strongly. But, Minister, today I wanted to talk about the off-calf program. And I know some of my Conservative colleagues don't hold it in high regard. That's unfortunate. I wish they would take a look at how it works effectively, and I'm going to speak to that today. In PEI, the off-calf program has been in existence, as you would know, Minister, for several years. It's offering incentives for farmers to implement and reduce emissions. And we're talking about research and necessary realignment of research facilities in Canada. Off-calf is an on-farm research facility that's provided to farmers to make decisions right on their own farm. We certainly see practices in PEI in particular, nitrogen management, cover cropping, rotational grazing. These are all things that are improving our soil health and our productivity, and we're still supporting Canada's climate goals. This current year, there's 290 farms or producers were supported across PEI with the off-calf program. It's well delivered by the PEI Federation of Agriculture, an advocacy group for island farmers across all commodity sectors. The other thing that we should look at is, since its inception, we've covered 95,000 acres in cover cropping, 68,000 acres in nitrogen management, and 15,700 acres in advanced grazing. And now that we're talking about an expansion of this program, I think there's 300 million announced nationally going forward. PEI's share is small of that, 12.5 million, but it is making an impact. I want to in particular highlight a couple of projects that were brought to my attention, and you would, Minister, you may know of the Mooney Farms in St. Catharines, PEI. So they did a grazing project this year, and for committee members here, they were able to do that by, they're potato growers, but they cooperated with beef producers, and beef cows were brought to their farm. They put a perimeter fence around, electric perimeter fence, and then they put collars on these beef cows, similar to the collars that you might use on your dog to keep it in your yard. And they were able to do intensive grazing. With the big knock on intensive grazing is the amount of labor it takes to move that fence every day. And so this was all brought about by OFCAF, a successful project that's going to create cooperation to get manure on land that potato farmers are using and build up the soil structure and protect the soil structure of that land. On my own farm, Pond's Edge Farms in Little Pond, we did a couple of different projects. We did a corn project, nitrogen enhancement. Anyone that talks about applying fertilizer to land, it's complicated to get it on at the right time and get it incorporated in. We were fortunate enough that with this nitrogen enhancement, we've seen higher yields. All the nitrogen got used up, and you know the sensitivity to nitrogen use in PEI. 99% of people drink groundwater, so nitrogen leaching is an issue that the Department of Agriculture in Prince Edward Island watches very closely. Cover cropping is also very important to the potato industry because we have a climate, an island surrounded by wind and water, and 30 seconds. We don't want to see. Oh, Minister, can you speak on climate action, please? If there's anything left to say.
20 seconds left.
Take your time.
You know what? You know, it's no. It's beneficial to have a farmer in my caucus that's close to me. So, and we're not related, by the way. So, look, there's a perfect point that.
I'm sorry, Minister, we've run out of time.
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
I've got to be.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Chair. Point of order. Point of order.
Point d'ordre. Point d'ordre.
Yep.
Point of order.
Est-ce que vous pourriez permettre au ministre...
Could you ask the minister to send a written response given the length of the question? Then we'd get an answer. Could you give the minister the permission to...
A point of order. You can make the request to the minister, but that's not a point of order. We've got 9 minutes left, so what I'll do is 3.5, 3.5, and 2. Is that fine? So 3.5, Mr. Bonk.
Thank you, Minister. When you were here in the fall, we discussed strychnine. I asked you directly, and you gave a very direct answer. I said, will you grant exemptions for strychnine use? Because it's a huge problem in the prairies right now. Your own communications department, the CBC, said that it's about $800 million of damage a year that's caused by Richardson ground squirrels. We have producer groups. We have R.J. Sigurdsson, the agriculture minister in Alberta. We've got Daryl Harrison, the former agriculture minister in Saskatchewan. Dave Merritt, the Saskatchewan agriculture minister. SARM, APAS, Canadian Cattlemen's Association, Stock Growers, Saskatchewan's Cattlemen's Association, all wanting this program. It's a huge problem for Saskatchewan and Western Canada. What is your response today?
Well, look, I'll stand by my comments at the last meeting I was here. It's certainly, there's an exemption that is part of the legislation, and I think that exemption should be looked at and obtained. I think when we dig deeper into it and we see what's happening in the U.S., in places like Nevada, I think there's a criteria that can be built around the application side of this. I think the farmers are, and...
Excuse me, Mr. Minister. Why was this exemption not granted?
Well, that's a PMRA resolution, and you know, as you know, I don't have any control over PMRA. I'm an advocate, a loud advocate in some cases, but I think there's further discussions that need to take place. But I think there's additional things that we should be able to do a comparable to other parts of the world that are using strychnine, that using it safely. The application.
Will you commit to speaking with the Minister of Health so that we can get this across the line? Because time is of the essence for farmers in Western Canada.
You have my commitment.
Thank you, Minister. The next thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is the research centres. So I live very close to the research centre in Indian Head, and as those are neighbours of mine who benefit from the research that's done there, I'd like to bring up a few things to you. One is that I know your government is very concerned with climate, I would say obsessed in some cases. When we have programs like OCAF that, and you know, as my colleague just mentioned to you, he was saying how that they're doing programs like cover crops and rotational grazing. That's stuff that we've been doing for 30, 40, 50 years in Western Canada. This is not new. Farmers don't need help with that. What we want and what we've done is we've had innovations that came out of Indian Head from Guy Lafond, from Jim Halford, where we've created zero-till, which has arguably done more for the climate in terms of agriculture than any other technology that's been developed. And now you'll see that worldwide. It's only $3.8 million to keep that research station viable, yet it's produced, I would argue, billions of dollars of value in agriculture. What is the rationale for closing a place like Indian Head that's 140 years, has 140 years of research excellence?
I'm going to have to stop there and go to the Liberals for 3.5 minutes. Mr. MacDonald.
It's great to hear that cover cropping's been done for a long time in Western Canada, but no-till's been done across Canada for a long time as well. So the research into that is ongoing on both files. Minister, do you want to speak to climate adaptation program and PEI, the OFCAF program? You didn't get a chance earlier. I'm not usually known as long-winded.
You know, the hot topic here is science, obviously, and I talked about more collaboration and taking science out of its silos and involving stakeholders at every level, including the academia. Knowledge sharing is extremely important in agriculture and across the country, especially when we're dealing with issues such as what we're seeing now in droughts in some areas and changing climates. And I know since 2022, OFCAF has trained approximately 3,000 agrologists in this country, and 27,000 producers have attended knowledge exchange and peer-to-peer learning activities. I don't think there's much more important than programs that bring farmers, producers, growers, scientists together. And I'm not saying that OCAF is the end of the world in regards to that, but it's certainly playing an integral role to helping farmers across the country in some aspects. In other aspects, maybe not so much. So I think there has to be a stringent evaluation done on it, and I hope the national policy framework brings out that information that maybe that would help both sides of this table that I'm sitting at in regards to maybe their comments, but maybe shed a light on, how we forge ahead in the future.
Yeah, well, that's a very positive way of looking at it. Every pocket of research or funding has a timeline, and eventually we have to move on to other ways of being more efficient in delivering our programming to producers. The trade diversification funding that you just recently announced, $75 million over 5 years, can you speak to how that's going to support market access and supply chain readiness to these markets, particularly the Asian markets that we've just introduced?
Look, it's one aspect of it. I think when you talk to producers and those representing producers and stakeholders, Canada's High Commission, opening an office in the ASEAN country, opening a protein office in Beijing. I mean, having boots on the ground in those countries is without a doubt likely one of the most important things. But to get there, to get those companies to the ASEAN countries, whether it's the beef farmers in Singapore with us or Manila, it's extremely important to have them going back year after year, or maybe even more frequent, to build those relationships. Governments can only do so much. They can open the door, but they can't keep the relationship at that level, at the grassroots level, and that's what we need. And we need more of that. And I think, okay, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes to the block, and then we'll finish up.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Buy local is a big thing right now, buy Canadian in this context, but it seems more and more difficult to do this because labeling is a problem. Products are hard to identify. We've noted it in our own grocery stores for a while now. Minister, do you think it's about time to do in-depth work to improve labeling, to ensure traceability, the true origin of products, and also issues of transparency for consumers with the use of GMOs, for instance?
Look, labeling, I guess we talk about the cost to producers, and I think that's, or processors or manufacturers in some of these cases. I think the whole system maybe should be looked at in regards to whether it's Buy Canada labeling or what we have to do, but we also have to keep in perspective the cost that some of these, initiatives may arise. I mean, we're obviously having an affordability issue across this country, and to put more cost on a producer or a manufacturer or a processor, it's going to translate into more money that the retailer is going to charge the local individual coming in to buy those products. So I think there's a whole system there that has to be looked at. It can't be just one or two things that have an interest in us. I agree with you to the extent of should be clearer as far as what's Canadian and what's not. I think that's extremely important. I think we've made a lot of headway in that regard, but obviously there's lots more to do.
Je vous invite à...
I'd urge you to also reflect on the cost of not going with labeling, traceability, and the issues relating to health that this might mean. And knowing that data on traceability is often available, quite accessible. It's just to make that accessible to people.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes this part of our meeting. Minister, Deputy Minister, thank you for your time, as always, and we'll suspend for 5 minutes. you by name or by asked a question directly by a member. For those on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. And a reminder that all comments should go through the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 18th, 2025, the committee is resuming its study on the subject matter of Clause 223, Division 8 of Bill C-15, Budget 2025 Implementation Act Number 1. I'd like to welcome our witnesses joining us here today. From Farm Credit Canada, we have the CEO and the President, Justine Hendrick. We have Ms. Mitchell Baudin, Executive Vice President, and with us in person is Darren Bacchus, who's the Executive Vice President. Thank you so much for being here. You have 5 minutes to make your deputation, then we'll open it up for questions from the floor. Thank you for joining us here today.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to celebrate this great industry and the extraordinary people who make it all succeed. FCC exists to support Canada's agriculture and food industry and the millions of Canadians whose livelihoods depend on it. That is our mission, and it's huge. This is our biggest manufacturing sector. It employs 1 in 9 people in this country, and it accounts for 7% of our GDP. Allow me to offer some examples of the amazing work that our customers are doing. Take the operation in Elm Creek, Manitoba, where an FCC client is using robots to milk their 1,300 cows. The cows wear computerized collars to monitor their movement and health. It is state-of-the-art. Or there's a farm in Guelph, Ontario that's pioneering indoor agriculture. Imagine the difference that can make in places where sunshine and farmland are in short supply. Ou il y a l'entreprise à Saint-Hyacinthe, au Québec.
Then there's the company in Saint-Hyacinthe, Quebec, which is one of North America's leading veal producers and the continent's second largest sheep processing company. This is the future of agriculture in real time.
For our services is strong. Over the past 15 years, we have tripled our book of business to $63 billion, and we're on pace to hit $85 billion by 2030. In the past 3 years, total assets are up 24%. And 85% of our loans are 1.5 million or less, meaning about 60,000 loans in the book. That represents a lot of Canadian families. And FCC exists to support these families' success. Consider our small team in Brooks, Alberta. Last year, they lent $67 million to producers in that area. And in addition to supporting our customers, that infusion into the community supported 275 jobs in Alberta and 148 additional jobs across Canada. En fait, l'an dernier,
in fact, last year, FCC earmarked $19.5 billion, which helped our industry add $14 billion to the country's economy and support nearly 137,000 jobs.
I want to stress this. We are internally funded, meaning FCC receives no money from taxpayers. In fact, we generate a reliable annual dividend to our sole shareholder, the Government of Canada, and we reinvest profits to benefit farmers and ranchers. But as you know, there's no standing still. In recent years, investment in the industry has lagged, and so has productivity growth. So we're evolving fast, improving our lending and other services, while also igniting strategic innovation and investment. We're simplifying our lending process to serve customers more quickly and efficiently. We've redesigned our transition loan to help producers plan succession. And we've introduced Root AI, our free virtual farm assistant, to help farmers solve problems on the go. Our new FCC Capital unit is rolling out flexible financial products and proactively drawing private capital to the industry. Just since 2024, FCC Capital has directly invested more than $300 million in ag tech innovation. Let me be clear. Every dollar FCC invests is for the ultimate benefit of farmers and ranchers. And our commitment to this industry is long-term. Last year, we pledged to invest $2 billion by 2030 to propel innovation and productivity growth. And earlier this week, FCC convened private investors who jointly pledged $5 billion of new investment in this sector by 2030. That's $7 billion by 2030. It is the biggest dollar commitment to Canada's ag and food sector, and certainly in my lifetime. Tout sur ce quoi nous travaillons.
Everything we are working on right now is aimed at supporting the success of this industry and the millions of Canadians who contribute to its growth. And they won't be the only ones to succeed. This is essential for Canada. Canada is a major exporter of food products, shipping goods to more than 190 countries. We're working hard to support this industry as it diversifies its activities internationally.
We know the stakes for Canada now are as high as they've ever been, and I'm here to tell you that FCC is on it. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the Conservatives for 6 minutes. Mr. Barlow.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Darren and Mr. Backus and Ms. Hendricks for being here. You talked about every dollar that FCC profits are to benefit farmers and ranchers, and that was your commitment in your opening statement. But I have to question, Ms. Hendricks, when you have allocated in your time more than $64 million to outside consultants, $5 million to sole source contracts, in a time where you were saying every dollar is to benefit farmers and ranchers. At the same time as you've spent $64 million on consultants, the executive team at FCC has almost doubled from 25 to 45 people. Can you table the job description of each one of those members of the senior leadership team and their salary with this committee? And can you explain, in a time of financial restraint, when every dollar is supposed to be benefiting farmers and ranchers, why are you spending $64 million in consultants and at the same time doubling the leadership team? Why do you have to do both? Is the leadership team not doing their job?
Thank you for your question. Let me start off by highlighting that with the size of an organization such as FCC and the risks in the market that are increasingly becoming more complex, it's important for an organization as FCC to stay on top of some of those risks. And many of those contracts that are awarded are to help FCC navigate some of those risks, such as technology and cyber, in order to make sure that we keep up with that. We have dedicated some dollars, yes, to transformation, and part of the result of that those transformation dollars have resulted in the announcement that we received earlier this week. I would like to also state that of the 300 contracts that we award on an annual basis to help run our business, 98% of those contracts are awarded on a competitive basis. But I would like to give the opportunity to our Chief Financial Officer, Karina Mitchell-Bonin, to talk to you a little bit about how we assign those contracts. Karina?
I don't need to know how you assign those contracts. The fact is you spent $64 million on contracts at the same time doubling your leadership team. To me, one or the other, not both. But Ms. Hendricks, you know, I'm sure you're expecting this question, but in a video call with your staff, you were asked which leader you admired most, and you stated Fidel Castro, and I quote, "You admired his courage and how he stuck to his values, the rage and his tenacity." Do you think admiring a communist dictator who imprisoned journalists, academics, political opponents, perhaps murdered tens of thousands of his own citizens, do you think that's appropriate for the CEO of a Canadian Crown corporation to be emulating a dictator like Fidel Castro? And do you regret those comments?
Thank you for your question. My biggest role model is my mother. I misspoke at that meeting.
I would hope then, misspeaking at that, I'm finding it hard to believe that you misspoke at that meeting because you've had quite a long, I could give you the transcript of your description of why Fidel Castro was an idol. I would hope that you would write a letter to the staff at FCC and apologize for those comments, and that is not a leader that you should be emulating. And certainly from the dozens of emails and letters we've had from FCC staff who are talking about the toxic culture within your agency, perhaps there is some concern that those leadership tendencies have trickled down to FCC. But more to a specific case, and again, you talked about how every dollar is to benefit farmers and ranchers. FCC gave Aspire Food a $40 million loan, of which you have recovered $15 million. What has happened to the additional $25 million? Is that going to be recovered by FCC? And who signed off on that agreement? And is someone going to be held accountable for losing $25 million of FCC money?
Thank you for the question, and I would like to give the opportunity to Darren Backus, who heads that division of ours that can provide an answer to you in regards to Aspire Foods.
Minute and a half left.
Thank you for the question, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to speak on behalf of FCC for the Canadian food and ag industry. Aspire Foods, as you correctly stated, we did recover $15 million from that file. The file is currently still open, and due to confidentiality and commercial sensitivities, we're not able to speak with further details on that file. I do wish to assure the committee that FCC applies rigor and governance, both for its initial investments, the asset management of the investments, and to ensure that the maximum recovery occurs should some of these investments meet challenging times.
Thank you, Mr. Backus. And I would be concerned that you're saying that the due diligence was done before this loan was agreed to, and neither one of you are taking responsibility for who signed off on it. The fact that this company went bankrupt within a year shows me that you did not do your due diligence to find out if there actually was a commercial market for the product that Aspire was making, which is cricket protein. Had you done your due diligence, I think you would have seen that there was no market. But lastly, with my last few seconds, Ms. Hendricks, prior to your time, and I want to highlight that, the Liberal government invoked the Emergencies Act. And during that time, we asked FCC if any lists of Canadian farmers, clients of FCC, were shared with the government to hold them accountable for participating or potentially funding a peaceful protest. FCC said that did not happen. After we did some additional research and accessed information, we found out that FCC did keep that list and did share it with the Liberal government. Are there now mandate changes or rule changes within FCC that a Crown corporation will not share confidential information from its clients with the government? Certainly, have those members been told that their information was shared?
We're going to go to the Liberals for 6 minutes. MP Dan Duran.
Merci beaucoup et merci à vous deux.
Thank you very much, and thank you to both of you for being here.
Merci pour votre travail.
I'll start by thanking you for your work. I'm in a region where agriculture takes center stage, certainly in the Eastern Townships. And we're often told to what extent the work of your officers on the field is really appreciated, that your work makes a difference for them. So thank you for that. Another thing I note is that in the fall budget that was tabled, there's reference made to agriculture as one of Canada's key strategic industries, and FCC receives more means to support our agriculture, our farmers. Can you tell us about the funding you've received and how you will be supporting agriculture to make sure that remains a strategic key sector? Thank you very much for the question. I'll start by sharing with you the new strategy we implemented over the last 2 years. It's focused on 3 pillars, and I think it'll answer your question as to how we can do more for a sector that has so much potential. The way in which FCC wants to arrive on the market is, 1, by being bold, 2, by playing a catalytic role, and 3, we want to always make sure there's a balance. We strike a balance between the short and the medium and long term. When I describe being bold, I mean when there are new products and solutions. Now, to your question as to how we are going to use a budgetary announcement to see how we can deploy more, we really need to understand what the challenges are for farmers, all ages, and how an organization like FCC can be there with these dollars and these products so that we can really create what's required to maximize their success. The second approach is as a catalyst, and I'd like to refer to the announcement that happened earlier this week with the coalition of investors we brought together, we convened. The effort that FCC is able to make to bring industry stakeholders together. I want to mention specifically that in this case, these are investors who were not necessarily invested in agriculture and agri-food. And that really makes a difference. So those are two examples of things that we can do to leverage our work. Thank you. There are farmers I speak to regularly, and, the issue of the Syndicat de la Relève Agricole de l'Estrie, so these new generations of farmers, they always say to us that it's difficult for them to get access to a farm, to be able to work this succession planning issue. How can Farm Credit Canada help them more so in the future and given this funding? Thank you for the question. I'd like to share with the committee this point, actually, that we've got a new transition fund to answer your question. We already had a transition product on the market, but as you all know around this table, the cost of land, the cost of production is so high that it's difficult for this next generation to finance what they want to do. And I'll give you this analogy. Let's say you have a down payment. You're young, you just bought your first house. The first years, in fact, the first 15 years, you're mostly paying interest before you actually get to the principal. With this new transition plan project we've got, we're doing the opposite. So you're injecting a capital to reduce interest fees from the start. So let's say to acquire a farm that costs $5 million, you could save almost half of the value of the loan in interest through this new product that we just put on the market. It's only been a couple of months, but we're hearing from the market that it's going really well. It makes a big difference. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to hear this, and I will assuredly be discussing this with the people in my riding. Last question, because we only have a short time left. Diversity in agriculture really, to me, revolves around young people and women. I work very closely with an organization called l'Agriculture du Québec, and I know you work with women. Can you tell us what kind of support you're providing? Well, first, I'd like to share with the committee of the 103,000 clients we have at FCC, about 25,000 of them are women, and we're very proud of them. I can tell you that our portfolio, if you look at Mr. Bacchus, who focuses more on investment than primary agriculture, that's $500 million. And not only will we be there with the right financial solutions, but we will also have the whole council or advisory function in place. We will often orchestrate or organize summits, province-wide and federally. And so these groups can grow together, learn from each other. And we're very proud of the fact that we can bring forward examples where you have experts who can share their expertise. So not only do we focus on the financial side, we also do this on the council side, and also we want to bring together these communities and convene these meetings throughout the whole year.
Merci beaucoup. Nous passons au Bloc québécois pour 6 minutes. Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given we're on this topic, I'd like to ask you the similar question, but on another angle. Budget 2025, page 57 in French, Annex 6, there's a description of the FCC Act change. They say that a legislative exam is important because, and I'm quoting, usually farmers are older white males. Why is that in the budget? Should we help producers regardless of their age, their gender, and the rest without discrimination? Why is it important to specifically note this? Thank you for the question. That aspect of the budget is an exercise carried out departmentally. That notion, that exercise as to seeing what the considerations were, that's not something that we're involved in directly, and I cannot share really an opinion on that or to give you any advice on that. The Department of Agro and Agri-Food justified its closure of research centers by saying that the government cannot be the only one to invest in innovation. Do you share the view? And do you think science and research needs to rest on the shoulders of agricultural producers? What solutions are you putting forward with respect to this research? Thank you for your question. At FCC, we deeply believe that there's a direct link between investment in innovation to improve productivity and the way in which FCC can support Innovation. Actually, I'd like to share with you a statistic. If you look at investments, if you compare us to the U.S. when it comes to the ratio of investment in technology and innovation in the agricultural sector, we're talking about 23-1 compared to them. So there are a number of aspects to FCC's work. We do a lot of partnership with learning farms, if you will, where to support farmers to come together to test this new technology. Sometimes we also work with research organizations to try to advance and accelerate research and tech. So we perceive our work as a catalyst so that we can strike a balance between innovation and these things and how we can support innovation, which is directly related to increased productivity. That's what we're trying to do. In fact, I was going to quote your analysis, 23 times more in venture capital in the U.S. and to us, based on our population, it's 8.5 times. So we're having a major impact. Your funding, or you're financing products, how will they help to focus on diversity throughout Canada? Given that we're a national organization, when we make decisions as to where we want to invest, we look at things from a national standpoint. I'd say one of the benefits that we have and where we can really play a part, and this is linked to two aspects of our strategy, as a catalyst, but also as to resilience. We are in a position to bring together the ecosystem and have a global view of the ecosystem. You'll often hear me say, sometimes we don't know what's going on in BC. Are the people in Quebec aware of the research that's happening there? So we really want to have, and to take on this responsibility to bring those researchers together so that Canada-wide we can accelerate innovation twice as fast. That's how we can focus on our work. You just signed an agreement with investment firms for $5 billion in investments in agro and agri-food. How will this ensure succession planning, and how will the development of services and infrastructure happen in the rural regions and not just consolidate these major players in the industry? Thank you for the question. I'd like to share with you that within that $63 billion of portfolio for FCC, over 90% of our portfolio involves SMEs. And I would say that about 60% of them of our work is loans under $200,000. So first and foremost, I'm here to tell you that at FCC Canada, we're here for rural communities and small producers. To work with the coalition, what matters is to be able to put in the hands of these farmers the best possible tech. How do we do that? By making sure that we can test this technology with the people who know how to do this on a daily basis. The faster we can put this tech into the hands of our producers, this really high-tech products, then the faster we'll be able to have an impact Canada-wide to increase our productivity. Our focus is not to focus on the major players. In fact, we want to make sure that all actors in the sector can have access to the best possible technology so that they can innovate as fast as possible. I'd like to know how FCC defines rural. I find this is frustrating in Ottawa. We often get the impression that money is going to the major centres and not to the rural regions. And so this is a question I'd like to ask. Agri-Esprit, the fund you have, Agri-Spirit, you've got some interesting ideas there. People, communities, 50,000, population 50,000 and less. Could you perhaps share in writing how you define rural?
Minutes. Mr. Gold.
Conservateur pour 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I looked at your CV. It's very interesting. You were 17 years at EDC, 7 years at the Royal Bank. You have an MBA. You got a BA and other issues. You're passionate about agriculture. You were appointed, but Did you apply for this position, or did someone actually headhunt you, find you for FCC to head this organization? Yes, I applied for the position. Thank you for your question. If I understand you correctly, you're asking where my passion comes from. Well, my whole career has been defined by passion for my clients. You're bringing me back to an early time in my life. My affinity for agriculture and the agri-food and agriculture sector is that I'm the daughter of a mother who was a dietitian, and she was one of the first graduates of the École de diététiste du Québec. So food has always played a really critical role in my family. Question, you've traveled through Canada to meet farmers and abroad, Colombia, Germany, France, Singapore. Did you go visit research centers there? Because let's be honest, in Canada, they're going to become rare. You're going to take a look. What was the purpose of all of these trips? Because you're almost on the podium in terms of expenditures, but we would like to hear some justification for these expenditures. Thank you very much for your question. First, I'll split my question in two. Travel, domestically, we have 103 branches, if you will, throughout Canada. On average, I have about 100 meetings per month, and out of those, more than 55% are virtual. The choice to travel, clients or stakeholders, the first priority is our clients, these stakeholders. I'll draw a link here with the announcement that we received a few days ago. By going towards people, we can really get an in-depth understanding of what's going on the ground so that we can then know what the industry is expecting of us. International travel was either to gain a better understanding of what opportunities are abroad, globally, and we've also been invited to speak at conferences and to share the benefits of our agro and agri-food sector in Canada. And it's an honor, if I may, to share this success story internationally. Often, opportunities stem from these kinds of meetings for us. Now I'd like to speak to the banker in you. Agriculture Canada has a program, so advanced payment a program. It gives you a bit of a line of credit or liquidity over the short term. FCC has similar products. Have you ever considered joining your department, having it join with agriculture department so that you can offer this more universally? Because this product involves the shares of insurance with other creditors rather. Many farms can't apply for this program because they have to get short-term guarantees for their company to have access. If it were within the same program, the program would be universal. Have you looked into that? Thank you for the question. The answer, quickly. So have we studied this specific issue? No. But we're always open to looking at new ways to innovate so that we can facilitate things. So I'm thankful that you shared that idea with us. We don't have an internal study on that. A quick question for the banker again. FCC is having a hard time making inroads in Quebec. It's going well in Quebec, but you're really having a hard time finding your way into the Quebec agriculture market. Answer, inaudible. Certainly, you are entitled to your perspective on this. We are quite proud of our $6 billion portfolio in Quebec, 13,000 clients and 13 offices that serve the sector, the primary sector, and the agri-food sector. So this is a growing portfolio.
Merci. Nous passons aux libéraux. Député Harrison. Tout d'abord, merci de votre engagement à l'égard de l'agriculture et de votre aide pour la prochaine génération de femmes qui veulent jouer un rôle dans l'agriculture. Donc, merci beaucoup de représenter les femmes.
My colleague already
Pardon, Monsieur
touched
le
on
Président,
briefly.
l'interprétation ne se faisait pas en français. Oui, là, je vous entends, Madame l'interprète. Maintenant, je vous entends. Merci.
Okay. Go ahead.
My colleague touched on briefly the next generation of agriculture, and we talk a lot about what producers need now, and obviously with the threats we're facing and the difficulties with climate change, tariffs, and our new relationships we're building within the world. But I'd like you, if you could, to speak a little bit more about how important long-term planning is for the next generation, and could you talk about the supports FCC has or will develop to support the next generation?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And if I may, I'm gonna answer it in a bit of a reverse way, but I'll get to the point. There are two things that when we survey our customers are top of mind for them. One is speed, and the second is advice and insights. So what we've been doing to better understand, and to your point, really looking ahead at what the future looks like. We have a persona at FCC, and her name is Sarah. And Sarah would be a young woman that grew up on a farm, decides to go to Olds College, and at her young age is thinking that it would be fantastic if one day she could own a farm. But at a young age, she's not actually sure that she can. And what I'm trying to convey to you is that FCC is working on being able to start to work with Sarah when she's at Olds College, so that if the early days of Olds College, Sarah, we can be supportive, whether it's through education, how we demystify perhaps and help on the financial side to understand it, and then come along her journey to better understand what products and services can help her then maybe take the farm over from mom and dad. That is the way that we're looking at the journey of a young farmer. And it's through those key moments in their journey that we can really come in at the right time, and frankly, I would say earlier, so that Sarah has the opportunity to think about it and to really see the potential and make it happen. So that is how we are approaching our long-term view, to be able to start earlier with our customers. And certainly I would say, and it's a great testament to all of the employees at FCC, is how when sometimes things don't go as well, how quickly our staff go right to the customer, boots on the grounds, to understand exactly what the issue is and to customize for that customer exactly what is needed at that time. So it's a two-pronged approach.
Thank you for that answer. I think, so I farm, and I consider myself incredibly lucky to be able to have picked up where my parents left off. And I think that we need to continue to focus on people who maybe don't find themselves in the ag industry when they are young, and the lessons you learn while you're growing up, because there are so many young people interested in agriculture and how challenging it is to enter that avenue. So thank you for that. In the FCC document that outlines FCC's commitment to the Government of Canada's priority mandates, number 3 is bringing down the cost for Canadians and helping them to get ahead. Could you speak to how FCC will support this critically important issue facing Canadians from coast to coast to coast?
Thank you for the question. I would say to that the way that FCC can do that is to, really support investment in innovation. The more we can innovate and bring the cost of production down, that cost can then be reflected to Canadians across Canada. Our chief economist is not here with us today, but certainly he would say that is a direct correlation in where an organization like FCC can have influence.
Thank you. So speaking of innovation, earlier this week, an article in the Western Producer called Artificial Intelligence, the Future of Farming. Can you talk about the role that you see AI playing in the future of farming, and is FCC well equipped to handle this transition?
Do I have time?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
So very quickly, you're giving me the opportunity to speak about one of the favorite innovations at FCC, which is called Root AI. In response to some of the gaps that we saw in the market and from what industry and farmers were telling us, we created a generative AI robot to be able to answer questions, whether you're in the middle of your field or you're up late at night. Root AI has been launched about 6 months ago, and month over month keeps on accelerating accelerating in terms of not only feedback for its value added, it is a free service that FCC has launched into the market. And we're also looking at this stage to partner with different provinces to see how we can expand to bring some key data at the right point in time to our customers across Canada.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go to the block for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. In your annual report, you have $8.7 billion in certain funds, $690 million of profits, actually. So what are your plans with these profits, given that the agricultural producers are having a hard time right now? Thank you for your question. Those profits or those benefits, given we're a financial institution, they can be used either to ensure future investments if we need to implement an update to our treasury or cybersecurity measures. Our financial director, Madame Michelle Baudouin, heads up this department, but every year we carry out an exercise to really see what the best way is to invest these benefits, these profits. And it's important for an organization, if you look at what we do, it's not just to be really high tech, but to be investing in the future so that we can accelerate our progress. So there are many systems, business risk management, the importance, as I said, of technology, cybersecurity. So it's striking that balance that we're looking at each year to make sure that we have the best balance, in fact, to reinvest in the organization so that we can keep our advantage on the marketplace. Of course, we're talking about better support for farmers who are dealing with climate change, so the programs, that's income stabilization program you were referring to. There's a lot of concentration in processing and even among retailers. What can be done to increase the competition among sectors where there is less competition? Can you explain what you mean? Competition within the sector or with others? To have prices that are advantageous or better for consumers, we need more competition in general. Just look at what's going on in the great major grocery stores. How can we increase competition? Thank you for the question. The answer I have for you is this. If we invest in new innovation, we can support new ideas that can be commercialized, and that will increase the number of companies and competition.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for appearing. Many of us around the table come to this table with previously lived experience. I've had the honor and privilege of serving both as chair of a governance and HR committee and the finance and audit committee of a public sector ag agency. And so, as you know, in public governance, conflict of interest and actually perceived conflicts of interest are just as damaging as real ones. And so, particularly when they involve oversight regarding executive conduct. My colleague asked about some of your travel. What was not mentioned is that it was $460,000 of your travel in your tenure, the same as all 3 ag ministers in that same period of time. Investigations involving leadership, allegations of silencing internal dissent, or decisions impacting the credibility of the board. And that's where I want to begin. So with respect to FCC board governance, what mechanisms exist to ensure independent oversight of the CEO?
Thank you for that question. And I'd like to call upon Karina that can speak about our governance framework at FCC to answer that question.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to apologize for not being there in person. I sustained an injury and am not able to travel, but I am dialing in from Regina. FCC's headquartered in Regina. In terms of governance at FCC, we would have a governance model that includes a human resources committee, which oversees the annual goals and performance of the CEO. We would have a governance committee that ensures all of the performance of the different committees, which further includes the audit and risk committee, is living into industry standards, and the board would review the practices of management and the charters of the various committees to ensure that those are living into industry standards for an organization our size.
I do have limited time. How often does the board meet in camera without the CEO present?
Thank you for the question. At every board meeting, there's time in camera without the CEO.
So this occurred then very, very recently as well?
Correct.
Thank you. You talked about, or your colleague talked about, in the Governance and HR Committee. For how long did you serve both as CEO and as Chief Human Resources Officer?
I served, thank you for the question, for almost a 2-year period.
How was governance approval acquired for that dual role?
Thank you for your question. As it relates to the board, as my colleague Karina indicated, all board committees have independent charters that are followed through on an annual basis with specific work plans to work through. And items related to HR for the organization would be presented to that committee. And those items that require a vote are recommended by that committee to then be presented to the entire board and voted upon.
But would that not flow through your office as a CHR head before it was presented to the board?
That is correct. As the office or as the CHRO, I would be the member of the executive team that would have the accountability of the board committee around human resources. I would work with the chair of that committee in order to determine what are the correct agenda items. And to be clear, there is a work plan that is approved by the board each year in order what are the key items to bring, and that is closely monitored.
How is the obvious conflict of interest mitigated when you are acting both of those roles with respect to internal concerns about the activities of the CEO?
Thank you for your question. We do have processes that are available in order for if a staff would have a concern, whether directly to an executive or to CEO, there is an independent process that takes place that is accessible as well to the public service. And should a complaint be triggered, at that point, our internal ethical and compliance officer would step in and would independently look into any inquiries in that regard.
So would that internal officer not report to you? Would there be a venue that employees could go through that office directly to the board?
That is correct. That employee does not report to me, and FCC also positions publicly a report on all investigations that have taken place under the PSDPA each and every year.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the Liberals for 5 minutes. Ms. Châtel.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I can't resist. While my colleagues discuss cricket and travel, I'd like to get back to the major challenges that we are now facing. This massive crisis led by the fact that President Trump is threatening our economy, and as our Prime Minister said, a country that can't feed itself has very few options. So this government is very serious. This is a very serious issue, and these are very serious matters where we want to make sure the agricultural sector and agri-food sector can be resilient. In that context, I'd like to get back to a point you mentioned earlier, which is the announcement that was made of investments to the tune of $5 billion with a coalition of investors for our agri-food and agriculture sector. How, in fact, can we take this leverage and make sure this sector reaches its full potential at this critical juncture? Thank you very much for the question. I'd like to start by telling the committee again that this investment plus the investment that FCC announced, $2 billion, that's a total amount of $7 billion. That's probably the largest investment for the sector in my lifetime, certainly in the last couple of decades. What's really important, and we're really delighted by the fact that some investments are not actually 100% invested in agriculture, who are giving us a signal that they want to participate. And that's major. FCC, we often say that at FCC, we often say that agriculture needs us all. And since we started the business line under Darren, one of the objectives that we had, and one of the ways to really answer your question is this: is each dollar invested by FCC able to draw in additional capital? And what we have is a 1-to-3 ratio right now. Every dollar we bring in means we can bring in $3 in capital. So just look at the potential that involves. And success leads to more success. And I can share with the committee that the announcement that was made earlier this week, I think Darren's phone is basically ringing off the hook, and that's what we want. We want to reach beyond this coalition. Various organizations, pension funds are calling us to see what's going on in our beautiful sector, and they want to know more. So for us, this is a great sign, very positive. Can you tell us how this will benefit our producers in actual fact? I think the theme of the discussion today is investing in innovation, supporting the next generation, women who are interested in this or want to expand their businesses. All of these segments are important to the success of these companies. So FCC looks at the sector from the value chain's perspective, from seed to processing at every stage of this value chain, whether you can inject counsel, capital, advice, bringing people together. It's the entire value chain that will benefit from that. And as I mentioned, our portfolio, mostly focused on SMEs, I can guarantee you that our 1,100 employees Canada-wide would be more than happy to look into how we can support all the producers. Well, that's excellent news. And this committee also has a study underway on science and technology. In fact, you were invited to that, to testify on that. Can you tell us about investments in technology you're making? Because we have an issue there in terms of productivity. So how can FCC support innovation on the farm and in the agri-food sector to reach that full potential? I'll share this with you. One of our partnerships that we are engaged in, we think is really important, is with the incubators and accelerators. If I can use the example of a tech zone, which brings together young entrepreneurs who are trying to develop tech. And then if we can help facilitate the validation of this technology with the people who need it the most, that's how FCC can really have an impact.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us here today, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Committee, we've just got one item we need to work on. It's the in regards to the closing of this matter, Clause 223 and of Bill C-15. We've heard from the witnesses, and I have an understanding that there's no recommendations going forward. So we would, the clerk, myself, would put together a letter and respond back to the chair of the committee, saying that we have nothing to report. Is that fine?
Yeah, no amendments.
No amendments? Yep. So we're fine with that? Okay. That's it. Is it the will of the committee to adjourn? Okay. Thank you. Adjourned.
Merci.